And here we are still inside of our spawner script. What we're now going to do is write the code to actually spawn our enemies. This is going to use a lot of get components. There's going to be a lot of lines here. So if you need to pause the video or anything to make sure that you've got every line, that's totally okay. So what we're going to do is hit enter after our start coroutine there. And we're going to say game object clone is equal to instantiate in our open and close parentheses. And what this instantiate function does is actually creates a game object based on a game object that we provide. So what we're going to say is instantiate NPC, which that NPC is our game object here. We're going to say NPC, and then we need to give it a position and a rotation. So we're going to say this dot position, or I'm sorry, this dot transform dot position, and we're going to say this dot transform dot rotation. And that's going to make it spawn on our spawner with the same position and rotation as our spawner. Next, what we want to do is say clone dot get component, and then in our little I guess angled brackets here, we're going to say NPC because we want to get that NPC script on our enemy. And what we want to do is set its destinations equal to our destinations on our destinations game object. So what we need to do is use a find. So find object of type is a method that allows us to look through all the objects in our game and see if we can find one that is our specified type. And the type we're looking for here is destinations. Outside of our angled brackets, we're going to make sure to include our open and close parentheses. And then we're going to say dot my destinations. So what that's going to do is allow us to assign the destinations on our NPC to the destinations on our my destinations. Next, what we need to do is say clone.getComponent NPC, just like above, same brackets and everything. But we're going to say current destination is equal to random.range. And this is because we want to pick a random destination when we spawn enemies. We're going to say 0, comma, find object of type, and exactly the same as the line above here. Again, we're going to say destinations, and then add our open and close parentheses, dot my destinations, dot length. And what that's going to do is pick a random number between 0 and the length of our destinations, and that'll tell our clone here that it needs to go to the destination at that random value. Now we need to say clone.getComponent, and then our angled brackets, and we're going to say nav mesh agent, and again our open and close parentheses, and we're going to say the speed on this guy is random.range 3, 7. And that will allow us to just assign a random value to our nav mesh agent and allow each guy that we spawn to have some slightly different stats. Now, an important note here is we have that cursed red underline, and we want to get rid of that. So what we're going to do is scroll up to the top of our page, and underneath where it says using Unity Engine, we're going to say using Unity Engine. Remember to capitalize the U and the E. And we're going to say .ai, and it should be a capital AI as well. And what that's going to do is give us access to this nav mesh agent class. What we need to do next is say clone.transform.localScale is equal to clone.transform.localScale times random.range, and we'll say 0.6f and 1.4f. What this is going to do is similar to our speed, give every clone we spawn a random scale, which will make them slightly bigger or slightly smaller than their counterparts that we spawn ourselves. We also need to do another clone.getComponent NPC. This time we're going to assign a damage value that is random as well. So we're going to say random.range 2 to 12. So most likely enemies spawned from our spawner will be slightly weaker, but there is a chance that they're a little bit stronger. And then the last get component we need to do is clone.getComponent NPC underscore health. And you guessed it, we're going to give this guy a random health as well. So we're going to say it equals to random.range 75 and 150. So we can get our NPC's health anywhere between those two numbers. Now, of course, this is a lot, so if you need to pause and take a second to get all this and make sure you've got everything spelled right and you're doing the right searches and signing the right values, that's totally fine. Take your time. Just make sure you've got all of these typed correctly. What we also need to do inside this script, or not inside the script, but on our game object, is go outside and select our spawner here, and we actually want to make sure that we make this a trigger. And the only reason for that is that if we're spawning our enemies, we don't want them to be stuck inside of our spawner. So we're gonna make that a trigger so that our enemies can easily walk through it. And what we can also do is select our spawner and press F, and we're actually gonna find it in our game world, and we're gonna lift it off the ground just a little bit, because you see how tall these guys are? We don't want them to get spawned inside the ground either. So we're just gonna lift it up just a little bit. Maybe we'll say 3, a height of 3 will probably do. And that'll just ensure that these guys aren't spawned on the ground. Or we'll say a height of 2, or well, 2.5. Just make sure that wherever your spawner is, it could be on a hill or something, just make sure that you give enough space from the ground that, you know, the legs and all that of each enemy will fit underneath.